Have you ever gotten yourself into a situation where you were not happy, things are not going how you want them to, and yet you still struggle to speak up in that moment? And at the same time, you're likely replaying the conversation in your head and going over and over it and getting frustrated with yourself. Why didn't I say anything? Why didn't I speak up? Why did I say yes to something? And you're getting upset with yourself and you're not able to speak up in the moment. If so, this video is for you. I'm going to give you 3 steps so you can start speaking up in those hard to speak up moments where you struggle to advocate for yourself or set boundaries or ask for what you need, because it happens to all of us. Hi, I'm Del. I'm a coach for women, and I actually help women really speak up as the truest, most powerful version of themselves. And I also struggle with this. And the reason this happens so often, especially to us as women, is because of this people pleaser tendency that we do have. So we don't like upsetting others. We don't like making someone potentially not like us or think that we're being difficult with them in some sort of way. So we tend to hesitate, especially in those moments that can be a little bit more challenging, to speak up for ourselves. So I want to give you 3 steps so you can start to move this forward in a way where you come across these situations and you don't have the same kind of hesitancy that then just results in a bunch of overthinking after the fact and beating yourself up over what did or did not happen, so that you can actually speak up. You can advocate for yourself and set boundaries if you need to, or ask for what you want. So, the very first step is really being able to recognize your pattern. And this goes back to that people pleasing tendency. Everyone has it to an extent, and it can be different for different people. So, for some, it's more about this feeling of powerlessness. So, is it related to you either explicitly or implicitly being in a position where you're not as powerful as the person you're talking to? Maybe it's you're talking to a boss, maybe somebody else in a position of power. Maybe it's just they hold the cards basically in that situation and you're hesitant to speak up. For others, it's more a desire to help. So some clients even really are proud of the fact that they care so deeply about other people. They want to help. So when they are asked a question or asked for something that's like a favor, they are hesitant to say no because they want to help the other person. So, is that your tendency? And you're finding that you're not setting enough boundaries where your time and energy is being taken advantage of, or you just simply feel like you need to protect it a little bit more? And for me, and for others, sometimes it's about not wanting to be seen as difficult. So I do tend to be a little bit more vocal. I do advocate for myself more. And it doesn't feel good for people to think I'm just being difficult because I'm simply asking for what I want. Again, in our society, there is this weird perception of someone speaking up as being confrontational, and that is not it at all. Unless you're truly being confrontational and being very aggressive with it, if you're simply asking for what you want in the moment, then that is not what's happening. You are just simply verbalizing what you need to the other person, and you deserve to be heard. It is not your responsibility to take care of other people, to make sure their feelings aren't hurt or that they're not upset. And sure, in some situations, especially when that power dynamic comes into play, it can be a little bit difficult because you're literally under their hands, as was my situation when this came up for me recently at the dentist. So I actually went into the conversation ahead of time and said, it was a little too aggressive with the cleaning last time. It left with my teeth more sensitive. Let's be a little bit more gentle. And I didn't anticipate her going to town with the flossing at the end that actually was hurting my gums. And I didn't say anything in the moment. I struggled to speak up in that moment because I was like, oh, I've already asked for what I wanted from her. And then she was still kind of aggressive with this thing, and her hands are literally in my mouth as she's doing this. So it was difficult for me. So I thought it would be really helpful for us to think about, in addition to the first step of recognizing your pattern, how you get into that actual mode where you can speak up and advocate for yourself. So the second thing that I want you to do once you recognize your pattern is, in the moment, ask yourself this question. So, am I going to replay this situation, this conversation in my head and beat myself up in some way? Get upset with myself for not saying something? If the answer is yes, then you go to step three, which is basically 3 seconds of courage. 3 seconds of courage either before, during, or after. So if you anticipate going into a conversation, then you can prepare for it and take those 3 seconds and jump into that conversation before this happens again, so you can prevent it from happening again. Maybe it's more that you need to address it during. This is one of the hardest times, as was my experience at the dentist, of actually asking for what you want, because tension can be a little bit higher, especially if it's potentially a heated situation that you're in. Or it could be soon after. And I want to emphasize soon after, not like months and months or weeks and weeks later, where we're overthinking everything and not able to actually speak up. But soon after the situation happens, sometimes it's actually helpful to have some separation from the actual live situation to give that distance and allow for feelings to like release and calm a little bit to then express what you need to. So those are the three instances that you have the opportunity to speak up and advocate for yourself. So again, that is right before something comes up. It could be during that situation or conversation, or it could be soon after it. So for instance, with what happens when it comes up before. So let's say that you are having a situation where you know that this person just doesn't talk to you in the way that you prefer, or it doesn't feel respectful when you go into conversations and they are like heated in the moment. So it's probably better not to address them in that conversation, during that conversation when it's actually happening, and to prepare for it. Make sure you check out the other video that I have about the 4 steps to prepare for conversations, especially if you feel a little bit tense about it or uncomfortable going into the conversation. I won't go into all those details here, but know that you can actually prevent this from happening again by preparing for the conversation and having those 3 seconds of courage going into that next conversation so you can prevent this from happening again. So, if something is happening in the moment, maybe you're having a conversation with a colleague and it's not going well, they're getting upset, maybe you need them to just calm down or slow down or do what is going to be helpful for you to actually have a fruitful conversation. It could also be with a partner. Sometimes that can get heated or uncomfortable, and neither party is going to win in that situation. It's not about winning. And both parties are usually upset and feel unheard or unseen in some sort of way. So if it seems like the environment is right for you to be able to speak up, then I would encourage and invite you to take 3 seconds of courage to, in the moment, say something. So it could be, hey, honey, we are both getting really upset here. Maybe we need to come back to this later tonight. Or if it's a colleague, you can say, hey, Lisa, I noticed that you are very passionate about this, and I want to make sure I understand where you're coming from and what you're asking for. I sense some tension here and I'm feeling a little uncomfortable. But again, what you have to say and what you need from me matters to me. So would you mind if we schedule another time, either this afternoon or tomorrow, for us to revisit this so we can both hear each other and understand where each other's coming from? So it's more that in the moment, if you can decrease some of the tension, having that conversation during what is actually happening is really helpful, as opposed to like attacking the other person and saying, you're being really mean, or you're being super aggressive, or you're being so loud. I can't process this information. So you definitely don't want to do that. You do want to advocate for yourself, but sometimes it's just the boundary of space. Sometimes it's the boundary of this energy is not working for me right now, and I need to revisit this with you later. So you can put the other person at ease. You don't have to have it be this aggressive conversation because, again, no one wins in that kind of situation, but it's enough for you to take care of yourself in that moment. Sometimes that is all we need, is not to put ourselves through that kind of experience, and then we can revisit it soon after. So that is the third opportunity you have to practice those 3 seconds of courage. Don't let it fester. Don't sit on this for weeks on end or months on end and like just worry about, oh my gosh, this person's going to be upset with me, or they're going to think I'm super difficult, or, they're in a position of power, so I don't want to upset them. Whatever your triggers are, whatever your pattern is that holds you back from speaking up and advocating for yourself in the moment, this is your opportunity to actually address it soon after. So, what that can look like is, okay, so let's say you did have a disagreement with a partner. Maybe you fully shut down. Maybe you didn't even ask for, hey, honey, we need some space right now. You just shut down. You said, okay, you walked away. You were super upset. You didn't feel heard. But you want something to change. You know something needs to change. It's a matter of having those 3 seconds of courage to ask for what you want from that person. So, sitting down with them, having the conversation. I do go into this a little bit about how you can prepare for the conversation to also put the other person at ease in that 4-step video to asking for what you want. For the sake of this video, what I want to share is that you simply want to make sure that you are expressing your need very clearly. So, taking the time to sit down and say, hey, when we had that conversation, I noticed you were really upset. I was also really upset. I don't feel like we really heard each other. Next time, if we're having a disagreement, can we at least agree to not raise our voices? Can we at least agree to maybe ahead of time anticipate that and say, okay, let's take some space. We're both heated right now. So encourage both of you to come into that conversation. So it's not just on your shoulders to kind of release some of that tension, but for both of us to actually speak up and say, hey, we're both feeling heated right now. We need some time. Let's come back to this conversation. So essentially, those are the 3 steps. Recognize your pattern. What holds you back from speaking up in the moment or near that moment of something that is just not sitting well with you? It's not serving you in some way. It might be upsetting you. It might be draining your energy and time. It is just you not taking care of yourself. It's you prioritizing the other thing over what you want and need. And then taking that moment to ask yourself, am I going to regret this later? Am I going to be frustrated by this, beat myself up, replay that conversation over and over again, and be like, why didn't I just say no to this person? I said yes, and I wasted 2 hours of my day going back and forth. This actually happened with a client of mine where she was asked a favor from someone to catch a ride to their home, which was, almost an hour in the opposite direction of her home. And she ended up accommodating them. And she promised herself never again. So, in those situations, asking yourself, am I going to regret this later or beat myself up or be upset by it? Replaying the conversation. If the answer is yes, take those 3 seconds of courage to really advocate for what you want and need, to set that boundary that protects your time and energy. It's really, really important to do that. Because one of the things that I really want for you is that sense of inner peace. It is overwhelming to have all of this overthinking happening and, replaying the conversation, and it drains so much of our energy to do that, as opposed to having that courage to actually speak up and set the boundary ahead of time, in the moment, soon after the moment. But taking the courage and the time to actually speak up is so important to your overall emotional and mental well-being. So those are essentially the 3 steps. I would love to hear from you. How did it work for you when you actually applied it? Let me know in the comments. What do you struggle with? Is there a different pattern that shows up for you that makes you prioritize the other thing over knowing what you want and need and advocating for that? So make sure you check that out. Also check out, like I said, the other video, 4 steps to asking for what you need. This is a way for you to prepare for conversations in advance so you can be at ease yourself and even set the other person at ease. Looking forward to talking to you in the next episode.